Okay. Chair Das,
Aye.
Vice Chair Bolton,
Aye.
Board Member Andujo, Board Member Champagne,
Aye.
Board Member Hinojos, Board Member Lamb,
Aye.
Board Member Trujillo. Not here. Thank you.
So the agenda is approved, and if we could approve the meeting minutes from our last meeting on September 18th. Can I get a motion to approve?
I move to approve. I also did want to note that the minutes that are on the agenda packet currently do differ from the ones that were on the original agenda packet. Just they added more, or the new ones have more like specific language around certain funding conversations. And I believe it's only the third page or the second page. The final page is the only one with any revisions on it between the two versions. But I move to approve the amended minutes.
I second. Can we get a roll call vote?
Chair Das,
Aye.
Vice Chair Bolton,
Aye.
Board Member Champagne,
Aye.
Board Member Lamb.
Aye.
Thank you.
And with those two items taken care of, we would now move into public comment. And I can't see if there's anyone present in the chambers there who would like to offer public comment. Or if Cassandra, I know you're kind of here in observer mode, but if you had anything you wanted to say. Okay, it doesn't look like we have any public comment. And Ian, I know you had said you needed to drop off in the next 10 minutes or so. So I wanted to ensure there was time to address any questions to you that board members have. And so I think this relates to questions from our last meeting around language and language discrimination and how that would be addressed or classified. But Chair Das, I know this was something you and I think board member Champagne talked a bit about at our last meeting. So did you have anything to add on those questions?
No, not that I can think of currently. But just to make sure I'm on the same page, are we talking about the definition for national origin / ancestry, and like how the board would use that term legally? Was there any conversation beyond that one?
I'm looking at the minutes from the last meeting, and so I am referring to how language-based discrimination would be classified, whether it would need to be a standalone basis for discrimination or if it would be encompassed in discrimination based on national origin, essentially to ensure that there is a pathway to report that kind of discrimination to the Human Rights Board and to OCR.
I can speak on that very quickly.
Great.
The definition of national origin, as customarily used, does not include language discrimination. It really is national origin, like discrimination based on your country of origin, where you happen to be from. You can have national origin that is not the subject of discrimination while speaking a language that is, if that makes sense. Like if If someone is discriminating on the basis of your spoken language, your inability to speak English, for example, that's not necessarily discrimination on the basis of national origin, um, but it is discrimination. And so my recommendation would because I understand that, the Human Rights Ordinance is something that is possibly being looked at for updates, clarification. That would be a really good thing to include, is to expand it to include language discrimination. Does that make sense?
It does. So, in your opinion, to really capture and address language-based discrimination, there would need to be an amendment to the HRO to sort of enumerate it specifically.
I would recommend that because you can make the argument in good faith that um, language discrimination is a function of national origin. But I don't think that's a guaranteed winning argument. If someone were to challenge an assertion of discrimination on the basis of national origin, they could easily argue that it's not based on their national origin, it's just based on their spoken language. I think if you want to have uh, more certain footing to tackle that kind of discrimination, I'd recommend an update.
Mhm. Thank you. That's helpful. Did other board members have questions on that explanation?
I was curious about if there are any alternative means of addressing language-based discrimination, like if any other governing body or like judicial means of addressing a situation like that exists already, or if the board making that recommendation would be like kind of the only route that people have.
So understand, I mean, I would have to research that because I couldn't tell you within the scope of all federal and state laws if there's some other means for tackling language discrimination. What I can confidently say is that it's not in the board's purview. The board, its functions are set out by the enabling or the enabling legislation that created it, right? The Human Rights Ordinance spells out the powers of the board in Section 1136, what the board can do. And it really gives the board the power to, make investigations, target discriminatory practices that are in violation of the HRO. And so for the board to have any power over this issue in a way that includes some legal certainty, I'd recommend updating the HRO because it's not only in the board's purview to, for example, go start enforcing federal or state laws dealing with discriminatory conduct. It's um, the unlawful discriminatory practice that the board can tackle is clearly defined in Section 1137, and it doesn't include language discrimination explicitly. The board does have the power under 1136 C to recommend to city council and mayor legislation to aid in carrying out the purposes of the HRO. And so that's what you'd be doing. You'd be recommending expanding the HRO to include language discrimination.
For sure. Thank you for that. I was asking more in like if we receive complaints that fall in that category, like if we knew of resources that we could refer out to.
And that's outside my expertise. Other external resources that could help people tackle that. Unfortunately, it's just outside of my expertise. But the board could choose to plow ahead and hear that complaint as a function of national origin based discrimination if it wanted to test those waters. But I don't know that I'd recommend it.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
No, I didn't have anything else on those questions, Chair Doss. So Ian had let us know that he had to drop off around this time. So I wanted to make sure we got to those questions.
I've got a couple more minutes because there were some other questions posed to me in an email that I want to make sure I address. But before I do that, I want to make sure we cover anything else you all have.
I think go ahead and address those questions.
So it was asked to me in an email, what authority the Human Rights Board has to engage in fundraising efforts to support community challenges. What are the limitations on that? Is it possible to have a budget or an account to receive funds? And are there restrictions on recommending donations to specific organizations? So that's really four questions, and I'm going to tackle them individually. Um, the Human Rights Board does not have the explicit authority to engage in fundraising efforts. The board, it feels a lot like a nonprofit, and I can understand kind of getting um, into the headspace of seeing it as a nonprofit organization with certain functions like that. But it's really not. A board, a city board, commission, or committee, it's not a distinct legal entity. It is just an extension of city authority to do certain things that are explicitly set out in the legislation that created it. So, like I said, the Human Rights Board, its functions are very specifically and clearly defined in the Human Rights Ordinance, Section 11.3.5. Fundraising is not one of them. There's also problems with fundraising having to do with mechanics, tax mechanics, things like that, because the city's a municipality, not a 501(c)(3) or similar organization. There's limitations around how you can solicit and receive donations and what those donors can do with that. So, as a general rule, city boards are not supposed to engage in fundraising activities. Similarly, um, as far as budget goes or the ability to receive funds goes, city boards typically don't get a budget. There are some exceptions to that. There are some city boards and commissions that have functions, again, spelled out in their enabling legislation that they have to do that include a cost. For example, a lot of boards need to hire outside counsel for different things. That's provided for in city charter and the ordinances. And so the department that to which the board is attached might at that point include something in their budget for the board's necessary functions, like I said, for outside counsel is a good example. So I believe the Human Rights Board is attached to OEI. That's my understanding. And so the board should work with OEI to the extent it has possible expenses that are part of its functions that it needs to cover. That would be a discussion between the board and OEI. Um, it can't have its own bank account, for example. Again, it's not a distinct legal entity. It can't do its own banking or anything like that. Um, and as far as donations goes, um, it can't fundraise, it can't bank, and it really can't donate funds because it's an extension of the city. It is subject to the anti-donations clause of the New Mexico Constitution. It cannot be donating funds for the interment of or benefit of private individuals or, um, in most cases, other organizations. There's some very specific exceptions to that, but as a general rule, and for these purposes, I'm just going to say, like, you're going to run afoul of the anti-donations clause if this tries to support, for example, community organizations through donation of funds. That's not in the HRB's scope, as mentioned in section 11.3.5. Um, the HRB has very set functions that it's supposed to be doing. That's not one of them, and it's not something that it could be doing. So sorry if that was a little off track. The email I got was extremely light on specifics, so I don't actually know what it is that you all were envisioning or possibly envisioning doing. So I just did my best to tackle the questions as abstract as they were. But do you all have any follow-up questions on that?
I do not. I do believe that I was the one who brought up these questions during the last meeting, mostly out of a trying to see where the boundaries exactly are,
Mhm.
so that we don't like take action that would like cross any of those, and so that we know like the fullest extent of what we're able to do for the community. So thank you so much for adding clarity there.
Absolutely. And if anyone has any questions about what the board's functions are as articulated in the statutes, I'm very happy to go through them with you. But Yeah, that statute is where the board's authority begins and ends.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your time.
Chair Josh, should I move us to the next agenda item? I know we kind of went a little out of order here, but I wanted to accommodate those questions. So that would take us to the director's report from the Office of Civil Rights.
Thank you. I wanted to check with you. I know Director Laurel was here last week. You'd informed me previously that you want always OCR report every month and on a quarterly basis, an OEI update. Did you receive an OEI update last month?
To my knowledge, we did not receive an OEI update.
So what I'll do, with your permission, is leave space for Gabby to give report, and then I'll come in with very short updates for OEI. Gabby.
Sounds great. So hello, everyone. So just following up, I did send emails to all the board members individually just to have a time to connect and learn a little bit about your experience. You've all been serving the board much longer than I have been involved. It would be really great to meet one-on-one and learn from you. I've already had a chance to do that with a few of you, so I'm grateful for your time. I also wanted to, maybe I can share the screen and show the updates for the resolution that was passed with changes, if you can see it here, changes to the complaint form on the website. So it's all added here, which is really great. We also added a definitions page for the discrimination terms because we recognize that there might be some confusion with some of the new terms. So it's easily accessible. So you can click here and the terms are there. So that's great. We've also been working with DTI, was the Department of Technology and Information, and maybe you've noticed this as well, so that when we get to the agenda and the minutes, just for easy access for the public, they're separated instead of being in the same packet. Of course, for board members, it's easy to have it in one packet, but for the public, for separating. So just sharing that with the Human Rights Board. We have been in communications with the Public Information Officer so that we can continue receiving applications for the Human Rights Board members. We know there's going to be a few transitions potentially at the end of the year. So it's going to be posted through social media. And of course, feel free to reshare with your networks and community as well. Human Rights Day is coming on December 10th, and I understand that last year you had a gathering together. So the Department of Office of Equity and Inclusion wanted to offer that if that was a day to come together and potentially have a lunch and discuss strategies for 2026, we'd definitely be open to supporting and coordinating that space. We are also planning to do some type of awareness around Human Rights Day social media campaign for December 10th. And we welcome any input from the board of additional activities or additional content that might be helpful to bring awareness in the community. So feel free to send me an email or call me and we can have a conversation about that as well. Let's see. I also wanted to share that from the city side, right now, for example, we're just using a regular Zoom meeting and they're asking us to make a transition. There's 3 options to either go into a Zoom webinar. Option 2 is totally in person. And option 3 is GovTV connected to Zoom, similar to what they do for city council meetings. And that's just to avoid some unwanted presence from individuals that would just join the Zoom meeting. So I'll leave it to the board to make a decision what makes sense. We have 2 months so that the December-January meeting, this new format is implemented for all the boards throughout the city, but of course, Human Rights Board as well. And then lastly, I wanted to share here a report. I understand this is something that was done in the past. I'm trying my best to make sure that you have all the information that that the Office of Civil Rights received. So I gathered information from July 1st through September 30th, which aligns with Q1 for fiscal year 2026 with the city. You will notice this is also the time that I was out on maternity leave. So, and you probably also know we haven't done a lot of education and outreach in the last few months since the office wasn't occupied. So this is really just complaints that come in because people are Googling, they get referral from other sources, right? And they want to find a resolution for their case. So, and just so everyone's aware, while I was out, an individual who's the constituent services coordinator from the mayor's office is the one that's been handling all the calls and complaints. So this is me trying to gather the information. I also emailed it to the board members. Oh, for some reason it's not showing completely on the screen, but you'll have the PDF in your email as well. So here you'll see the number of complaints. So there was 8 complaints in July, 17 in August, and 12 in September. This is just for the Office of Civil Rights. And then below, there is a graph that shows in relation to what case type it was submitted. This is people making their own clicks on that form that you saw on the website. And then there's either they didn't click anything, and that's why it says other, or they were outside of city limits. We get about a few number of calls from people that just Google and show up in Albuquerque, even though they might live in Florida or North Carolina. And then here by alleged discrimination basis. So maybe I'll pause here. I don't know if there's any questions about, I know I shared a lot of things, or about the report itself. Happy to answer. Maybe I'll just add about these cases. All of them have been replied to, have a conversation or an email with the individual, and none of them have open next steps to be taken. I also invite feedback from this report to make it more robust for upcoming quarters as well. So this is, in a sense, kind of like a baseline of what we have from our office, since it's really based on not a lot of outreach and, very new office. So in a sense, I think maybe Vice Chair Bolton had a question.
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to thank you for reviewing this with us. It's really helpful to see information that's a bit more granular on the flow and submission of complaints. I had a few questions. I guess first is this, you've mentioned a few times that this is reflective of, not much outreach happening, maybe relatively low awareness. So is this kind of low relative to what you would expect, or you would expect an increased number of complaints with increased public education and sort of increasing awareness of this as a pathway to address alleged discrimination?
Yes. So I say it's low for 2 reasons. One is I was reviewing reports from the Office of Civil Rights from a few years ago, and I think the numbers were around 20 to 30 a month. Right, so in here it's between 10 and 20 a month. Also, yes, I do expect that once we are more outward facing in the community, people will know that there is an office within the city that can address their concerns, and I expect more calls and inquiries through the form submission as well.
Great. It'll be great to have that sort of growing awareness in the community. And you had said all cases have been replied to and none have an open next step. So does that mean sort of it's in the complainant's hands in each of these instances in terms of, I guess I'm trying to understand like where
Mhm.
things are procedurally, and as far as that grievance sort of sequence goes, and what OCR's investigation would look like before anything came to the board. Just trying to get a better understanding of the spread there in terms of where things are in that sequence or that procedure.
Yes, and maybe that's something that I can work on putting some type of graph around it. But for example, for a lot of the calls, perhaps there is not necessarily a next step. Perhaps it's not within the 90 days, right? Maybe it happened a few years ago and they're finally calling. So there's not much that our office can do. A lot of times we refer to different agencies, so then it's on the individual to then take the next step. So perhaps it was actually a call related to housing, but it's really consumer protection. So then they might be calling the state consumer protection office, or they might be better equipped to work with the office of human rights with the state, perhaps, or perhaps it's just giving them the resource to know what is the legality around ESA, emotional support animals, for example, right? So from my understanding and in the conversation, we haven't had any of these cases that would require a next step with the Human Rights Board. And also because a lot of these cases were handled not necessarily by the Office of Civil Rights, right? They went to the mayor's office constituent services representative. So they were dealing with all of them and referring to other organizations within the community. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, it does. Thank you. And I think it would be fantastic to include that information in future reports,
Okay.
just sort of the disposition, or sort of stage in the process for the different complaints, especially as there's more kind of capacity and infrastructure to sort of handle and address those complaints as they're coming in.
Yes.
If I may add on to that, I think it might also be helpful to include information about like where people are being referred to, like the number that are being referred to the EEOC versus the NLRB or wherever we're sending folks. I think that might be, I don't know. I think information might be able to come from that.
Okay.
If there was, well, first of all, thanks for putting all of this together. I think some of the categories are extremely broad, and seeing a little bit more of a granular breakdown, I think, would be helpful for just kind of getting a sense of what the complaints are specifically about, and just kind of noting any trends aside from the broad categories, even including like the demographics of the people making complaints. I think it'd be kind of interesting, and even like the zip codes where the complainants are coming from, and those sorts of things, like some of the details. When I was with the Community Policing Council, we would get reports that it would actually show the whole complaint from people and their interactions with the police. It would be, kept anonymous so that names were blacked out and that sort of thing. But it would say a little bit about what the complaint was, and it would show also the process of how that was addressed and what the outcome of it was. And I thought that was really helpful.
Thank you for that. Yeah, maybe I'll just share that I do realize, for example, in this graph that's showing on the screen, there are large categories, but now with the change that was just implemented on the website from the resolution, we will have more options to show. So that's really helpful. Unfortunately, the form doesn't have any information about demographics, so I wouldn't be able to pull that information. But zip codes is definitely something that we can report on, because that's one of the questions related to in the complaint form. Any other feedback?
Could the form be, would you all like us to explore getting the form updated to include more demographic information? There are some things that we cannot document under our immigrant-friendly city, particularly people's background and heritage, so that cannot be used for other reasons. But we can explore what level of data we can do. So some of that for discrimination purposes has not been captured in the past, but we can certainly look at that before. Just a few other things on OCR. Wanted to also acknowledge our OEI administrative coordinator, who also has been working in conjunction with the mayor's office constituent services while Gabby was away, and even over the last several months. So just wanted to acknowledge him. Also, some of our plans for the upcoming months is just to design, develop, and implement training. Some of the discussions we've had have been like around landlord tenant. We've had conversations with one of the city councilors on renters' rights. Gabby and I have talked about doing like a landscape analysis, and she's launched on that already. But what we were thinking about was comparing our OCR work with like similarly sized cities and characteristics to see what they were doing similar, on the topics of civil rights and consumer protection. One of the things she determined early on is that there aren't many cities doing what we aspire to do and are legislated to do. Most of that work is being done by states. So that's something that we'll continue to explore. And also, I just wanted to celebrate Gabby. She's going to be doing a presentation for the Department of Senior Affairs, an age-friendly presentation at the CNM Workforce Center. So I wanted to mention that in case any of you all would be interested to participate. It's going to be on Friday, October 31st, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. So we can send information on that. Also moving into the general OEI presentation, and I will be very brief. You may be familiar that we have started an Asian Pacific Islander office, and the launch for that officially will be happening this Saturday at the Albuquerque Museum at 1:00. And so we'll send you information in case you're interested to participate in that. We'll have some wonderful food. We'll have cultural representations. Key people from the community will be doing special recognition and acknowledging the people who were responsible for helping get this office started. So that's been a huge milestone. And I'll just name like one thing from each office. The Office of Black Community Engagement is doing the Ujima Collective, which is a training for burgeoning entrepreneurs, and we're implementing that twice weekly. So we're looking at things like workforce solutions, marketing, AI usage, and accounting for small businesses. Those are just some of the topics over the last month. You guys have inquired about Office of Financial Empowerment a lot in the past. So I just wanted you to know that cohort 1 is going strong. We're about to launch cohort 2, which is going to be focusing on opportunity youth who are aging out of the foster care system. And we are collaborating with the nonprofit, and that's going fabulously. We aim to serve about 40 opportunity youth. And then in cohort 3, it's going to be around early childhood to address some of the issues and empower to create more early childhood positions, but also develop people professionally who want to follow that track. So in each case, they'll be receiving $750 a month for a period of a year. We are also doing data, so we'll be able to report on that if there's interest. And then finally, on OFE, they're doing a financial summit in conjunction with the State Treasurer's Office, and that'll be on December 11th. So we'll give you more information. And just to be brief, some new things. OIRA, the Office of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs, has launched a new podcast, Voices Across Borders. So if you're interested, we can share more information on that. And just this week, we've had several Indigenous people celebrations for the Office of Native American Affairs and continue to do some really great work with tribes. So I'll stop there. Thank you so much. Are there any questions? Absolutely. We can write up something and prepare that for you, a summary. Thank you. Back to you, Chair Dawes.
My only question was about if we could have someone from the Office of Native American Affairs come to the next meeting to discuss the 2019 MOU that we have with the Navajo Nation Human Rights Commission. I was hoping to, at some point this year, see what we can do to make that a more prominent feature of like what the board does. And more information would be helpful in doing that.
I know there is some work presently on an MOU. I'm not sure if it's 2019, but I'll verify that and we'll follow through for that.
Okay. Thank you.
Of course.
Also, I want to, I guess, repeat the thank you to OEI and the folks at the mayor's office who have been helping with the OCR processes. And also repeat our enthusiasm for having Ms. Marquez here.
She's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do we have any questions from the board, or should we move on to discussions and proposals?
No additional questions, just echo the appreciation for the updates and the report out on the complaints received. I think that's incredibly informative and valuable for the board. So I think we can move on to the next agenda item, Chair Doss.
Perfect. In which case, we could start talking about planning for 2023. But there are a few things that have come up during this meeting that I think, I don't know, they're more at like top of mind. So we might do planning for 2026 as a secondary conversation, and getting to like additional matters first. Mostly the idea of amending the HRO, is that something that members of the board are interested in pursuing, or are there additional amendments that like stand out as being like urgent recommendations that we could make for amendments? I remember 2 years ago, like when I first showed up, the HRO was missing mental disability, and that one was like a glaring omission. And I want to open the floor for any other omissions that might need to be addressed.
I think it's an important question, but would probably require, feel as though I always say this, but taking time between now and our next meeting to really review and consider those changes. I mean, the recommendation that we got today was pretty unequivocal that if we wanted language-based discrimination sort of within the scope of the HRO, and meaning like that folks can seek remedies through this pathway for that kind of discrimination, it would require an amendment. But there may be other amendments. Speaking for myself, probably could identify other, I think, changes that could enhance the HRO's scope and impact for the city, but would want to kind of think it through. But welcome other thoughts from board members on other, if there are other changes sort of top of mind, gaps, omissions, confusing provisions, that kind of thing that folks have top of mind, it'd be great to flag here.
I would personally need to take some more time and review it and think about it.
Chair Doss, are there specific provisions or potential amendments that you would want us to consider?
I don't know if this is something that would necessarily be able to be applied to like every provision of or every part of the definition for unlawful discriminatory practice, but I do think that having housing status included as a protected class on some of them might be worth looking into. And same thing with the history of incarceration. I know that incarceration can be a factor in the marginalization of people in pretty much every area of society post-incarceration. So, but I think that that's a very large ask, and there would be a lot of research and like work that would go into making that recommendation in order for it to actually like serve the community well. I think, I don't know, but those are the only two things top of mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I'd also, we can also think more broadly than the protected classes that are defined in the ordinance. So the powers of the board, some of the procedure outlined in the HRO around hour function. I think you could do kind of a comprehensive scan and identify maybe various changes. Where our discussion here today has mostly focused on those protected classes and whether there, expansion is needed there, which makes sense because we started this with the questions around language access. So I think it could be, I think it relates to planning for 2026 because I think an objective or a goal of the board for 2026 could be a more sort of systematic analysis of, where there may be gaps in the HRO and what recommendations we would offer to the city, to the mayor, to city council around, changes that we think would better effectuate its aims. So that is just something to consider.
I know that there was also the question from the city about if we wanted to switch to Zoom webinar, in-person only, or Zoom webinar plus GovTV. And I wanted to have that discussion as a board and come to a decision on that. So I guess I open the floor, or actually I'll make a statement at the beginning. I have a strong sense of attachment, I guess, to the Zoom format. And so the Zoom webinar or Zoom webinar plus broadcasting is kind of where my head is at. I feel as though in-person only would be exclusionary, especially like to people who don't have access to like private transportation, and people with physical disabilities. I think that would be exclusionary of us to have in-person only. Beyond that, I am curious about board's thoughts on broadcasting, because I don't know if it like adds any kind of pressure to the way we conduct these meetings, knowing that it will be available to the public afterward. Yeah, I'm going to stop talking there.
Sorry. I just wanted to clarify that the first option of Zoom webinar would allow for hybrid. So it's the same sense as this meeting right now, some in person and some hybrid. I think it's already clear, but just wanted to make it clear.
Thank you. And then also just for clarity's sake, the third option was broadcasting on GovTV and Zoom webinar. It wasn't like a different kind of Zoom.
Yes, it would be through Zoom and GovTV, but it would be streaming live, right? Because these meetings are recorded and then posted on GovTV. So that would continue if it's just in person, if it's a hybrid option, or if you want the option of live streaming.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I would support the virtual option, whether it's a Zoom webinar or it's the live broadcasting through GovTV. I know for myself, because I travel a lot for work, exclusive sort of in-person attendance would be a challenge for me. And I agree with you, Chair Doss, that it also is an access issue for the community. So I think Zoom webinars feels familiar since we've, historically used Zoom. So I might throw my vote behind that as the option here.
I second everything that's been stated already. I don't have enough familiarity with GovTV to really have a strong informed opinion.
So with the GovTV thing, I believe that the first meeting that we could still find like on GovTV's YouTube channel is from 2020, or for the Human Rights Board. And I've found that it's been a really helpful resource for like when I joined the board, I don't have a legal background, and like I was new to interacting with like city government, and so watching old meetings made it so that I was aware of like what the board does, and just like the way public meetings were conducted, and that's something that I think might be beneficial for future members in a similar way. I think that it really comes down to just, do we as a board want to archive the video of these meetings in that way? I don't know like what information is available as to like how many people are watching or like how much that's being utilized, but if it's available, I think it's a useful thing. And I'm curious if there are any objections to the idea of GovTV, because yeah.
I just wanted to say too, we are presently using GovTV, so this difference would be like we record it, we download it to our computer, and then we share it with GovTV. So this current option gives us the ability to edit things and make them concise. The other option would be a live recording. So it's what you see is what you get. So if something were to happen, it's less protocols in place to make sure there's a positive perception. Let's say it that way.
Right. So the only distinction then is it live broadcast or not? And so I think, I mean, it's a fairly routine event that we start meetings a little late as folks start coming in. I would say it's the recording and posting option better accommodates that as opposed to, so for instance, today, had we been live broadcasting, someone tuning in, there would be kind of just that 15-minute dead time. So I think recording, posting is and what has been available up to now. And as you said, Chair Das has been a resource to you in kind of learning about the workings of the board. So that would be my recommendation.
Could that recommendation be a motion to like vote on the matter? Unless there's further discussion, because if so, I would second it. I forgot exactly the way you phrased it, but I don't want to make a motion that I don't know, that I don't want to say it the wrong way. I forget which one it was. I think it was the recordings, or okay.
I would move then that the Human Rights Board elect to use the Zoom webinar option with recordings to be posted on GovTV after the meetings.
I would like to second that. Thank you.
And then can we get a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Chair Das,
Aye.
Vice Chair Bolton,
Aye.
Board Member Champagne,
Aye.
Board Member Lamb.
Aye.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, y'all. So back to additional matters and questions from the board. Are there any additional matters or questions from the board to be discussed? This is like intentionally a very open-ended agenda item. Just if there's anything that needs clarity or any ideas that anyone would like to present. Hearing none, we could do planning for 2026. I really like the idea that was presented during OCR's report of having a board retreat on Human Rights Day. I think that would be, I don't know, last year it was fun and productive. And so I think that it might be beneficial. And it would be the only time we meet in December because traditionally we don't meet on the third Thursday of December. Are there any thoughts on a board retreat this year?
I'm supportive of it, and I think it could be a good venue to think about planning for 2026 as well.
My question to the board is, we'd like to actually encourage, if your schedules permit, an in-person retreat. And our rationale for that is because we meet online so much, it will give opportunity for that interpersonal connection. We would like to provide lunch for everyone and just celebrate you guys and say thank you for your service. So if that's possible, we'd like to make that available to you. And if that would be the case, if you guys are interested to do that, maybe an expanded lunch hour, like 12 to 2 or we would just need some guidance in terms of what time so we could make the arrangements to accomplish that end.
And maybe I'll just share that we would be happy to host it at our offices as well, at the conference
Yes.
room, the fourth floor at City Hall.
And we do also have other options of seventh floor, which is a larger conference space as well. So there are a number of options.
And thank you so much. This is also Human Rights Day is on December 10th, which this year is a Wednesday. And we could look into scheduling and stuff more during the next meeting if that is best for everybody. I know that I've blocked off that day as I am available that day. But yeah, are there any board members' thoughts?
I'm supportive of it. I am currently working that day, and I work 12-hour shifts, so I might be able to trade shifts with somebody, because otherwise I would not be able to attend.
I would be able to attend. I think, yeah, the sooner we scheduled it, the better in terms of just making sure the availability lines up.
In that case, would it be best if we pencil in the event for an expanded lunch hour on that day? And I forget the time frame that you suggested.
12 to 2, but it could be 11 to 1, whatever's convenient for you all.
We'll do 12 to 2 unless that conflicts with anyone's schedule. And we could figure out what is it? We can confirm later also once we're able to adjust our schedules.
Also, I wanted to say you guys are not constrained to City Hall. If you prefer, we could pretty much locate any public City of Albuquerque public building. So if you wanted to do a community center or even perhaps Albuquerque Museum, it's a lot of options available. So.
Awesome, thank you. We'll do more future planning at that retreat. I did want to put it on everyone's radar that the chair and vice chair elections will be a part of the November meeting of the Human Rights Board. The term starts on January 1st, but yeah, if anyone would like to serve as board chair or board vice chair, please consider running during the next meeting. Which also, I'm trying to see what day the next meeting is. The next Human Rights Board meeting will be held on November 20th. That's not Thanksgiving, is it? Yes, okay, good. On November 20th, same time, same format, same place. Are there any other announcements or anything on anyone's mind before we adjourn? Hearing none, I move to adjourn this meeting of the Albuquerque Human Rights Board.
A second.
Cool, thanks everybody. Good to see everyone. Sorry again for the delay, but this was wonderful.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care. Bye-bye.